Hello, my name is Lynette Kameneth. I'm from the Film and Publication Board, and I will be your facilitator for this session today. So as you saw when you came in, we have some ground rules that we would like to just set with everyone. And I just quickly like to go through that before we actually start. If I can get my screen to move. Okay, so I'm just going to read through some of our webinar rules just to make it more comfortable for everyone. And the first thing I'm going to ask is that everyone who's not presenting, if you can mute your mic. And I think most people have already done that. I've also just switched off my video. We've just found that if you're not using your video, it just saves a bit of bandwidth and it makes it more easy for everyone else to have a pleasant experience while they're viewing. We also would like to ask you in the chat function, as most of you have done, but for people who have just joined, if you can introduce yourself and your organization to everyone. I think, because there's so many of us, and I'm very pleased to see so many of us here, it just makes it easier than trying to get people to introduce themselves. We're also asking that throughout the presentations that we're going to have today, if you can list any questions you might have on the chat room as well. The reason for that is that we're going to have a Q&A session right at the end, and we just want to make it a bit easier for ourselves to be able to pick up on the questions instead of having all I see we're close on 100 now, all 98 of us asking questions at the same time. It'll just be so much easier. I then also would like to ask, we do have a hashtag for our webinar today. It's #SafeCyberKids. You'll see it on the slide there in blue. We would like to encourage everyone to, let's just connect with the rest of the world and let them know what we're talking about and discussing today, and use the hashtag on Twitter, and also you can tag our partner organizations as well, just to spread the word a bit further. So that was just a little bit of our house rules. And then would like to just move on to to show you the agenda, if I can get my slide to move. And then what I would like to do is to kick us off in sort of proper South African fashion with a proper welcome, and I would like to ask one of our council members at the Film and Publication Board, Ms. Nobuntu Dubazana, to please do the opening and welcome for us. Nobuntu is a filmmaker and an entrepreneur, and she's one of our passionate council members when it comes to the protection of children and the rights of children. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I'm going to ask Nobuntu to please take the floor for us.
Thank you so much, Lynette. Sanbonani, everybody, on this chilly Friday afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us. We feel so honored to have you all here with us on our very first online webinar, Child Protection Week session. Ordinarily, we would be out and about in the streets face-to-face doing this outreach, but thankfully we have the capacity to do this online and in a digital space. And as we are a government entity, the first thing I have to do is protocol. So after I've done and said this, anyone else who's speaking has the space just to say all protocol observed. As Lynette mentioned, I am Nobuntu. I am one of the council members at the Film and Publication Board, representing Film and Publication Board today. We also have the Honorable Deputy Minister Pinky Kekana, who is the Deputy Minister of the Digital Technologies Department in South Africa. She is passionate about young people, and we feel so honored and happy to have her here with us, because we know that she's sharing her time with Parliament and us, but she has an extraordinary background in education, and because of that felt very responsible and wanted to be with us here today. So thank you for being with us today, Deputy Minister. We also have our partners, World Vision South Africa, who are not only helping us to ensure that we are technologically on point today in this cyberspace, but are also very passionate about cybersecurity for young people. We've got UNICEF South Africa in the building, and we've got Save the Children South Africa, who are all partnering with us on this webinar and will be speaking today and sharing all the work we are doing as partners and allies in protecting the African child when it comes to online content. So what I think I'll do after that introduction is just clarify exactly what our aim and intention is with this webinar. The Film and Publication Board and its partners are really looking to ensure that we face the challenges that come with online content distribution, content creation, with the power of our act. And I'm hopeful that many of you here today are familiar with the Film and Publications Act and the work of the Digital Technologies Department in cybersecurity. But we are the only entity within the Digital Technologies Department and also in the country who can criminalize sexual exploitation behavior online. And you're welcome to read more about our work in classification and regulation. But the most important thing about being able to criminalize that is that we're giving children and vulnerable viewers the power to know that everything they do online is now a stamp and a tattoo towards their career and their lifespan going forward. And so it's important for them to feel safe, but also feel really knowledgeable in this online space. And because of that, and because of our belief in education and our belief in outreach work, and just in our belief in mobilizing young people to lead this conversation, we're going to kick off this webinar with the voices of young people. And with us today, we've got three very excited and very motivated young people who have participated in some of our outreach work with us before. And they're being brought here today by World Vision South Africa. And it is Onaliruna, Siviwe, and Tabileng. And I just asked for the three of them please to turn on their cameras and their mic. And in this discussion with these three young people, we're just hoping that you get an idea of what their lived experience is. So I can see Siviwe and Onaliruna. I'm just waiting for Tabileng to turn her camera on. Tafadzwa Mazibugo, if you could just please turn your camera off for us, Sisi. Thank you so much. Okay, so Siviwe, Onaliruna, and Tabileng, please just say hello and introduce yourselves to everybody in the webinar today.
Hello.
Sorry, yes, maybe I should give direction. Siviwe, you can introduce yourself first with your manly, husky 16-year-old voice.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Kamalami Ngusiviwe from Greytown, and I'm 16 years old.
Siyabonga Puti. Onaliruna?
Okay, I'm Onaliruna from Tabanchu. I'm 15 years old.
Relebucha. And Tabileng?
I'm Tabileng. I'm 15 years old.
And where are you?
Grade 9 Lena. I'm from Bigville.
Okay, look at KZN coming through and the Free State, wonderful. And I'll represent Johannesburg today. So guys, I think why we felt at the FPB, at the Department of Digital Technologies, and with our partners here today, we wanted to start with your voices because our work is in support of you. So I think the most important question for all of us that will help us carry on to do our jobs well is understanding your lived experiences online. So my first question, and I'll direct it to you first, and Tabileng, is how do you spend most of your time online? Should I ask Onaliruna? Do you want to think about it for a bit? No problem. Onaliruna, tell us, how do you spend your time online?
Most of the time when I'm online, I'll post something to do with God. Sometimes I'll just check the post. Yeah, that's all I do. I didn't do much things.
So you share your content and you also like to consume other content.
Yeah, the positive.
Positive stuff. That's nice. We need more positivity on the internet. And how about you, Putsivio? What do you spend your time online doing?
Most of the time when I'm online, I just chat around my friends, just keeping, good relationship. Yeah, something like that.
Yes. That's good. Yeah, so you stay connected. Ufuna ukuthi izwe lakho online and offline lihlale lindawon.
Yeah. Funa uligcina lihlangene.
Perfect. And Tabeleng, usucabangile ukuthi what do you do online?
Yes. If online ngithanda ukubuka ama-post and connect with my friends. Yeah. That's
so
all
it sounds
I
like
to
your
do when
typical
I'm online.
teenagers. You sound like your typical teenagers. You're sharing, you're consuming, and you're really just carrying on with your community and spending time with them online. What do you think is the most beneficial thing online? When you're online, what do you feel like you're gaining the most? Like, where are the benefits with the online space for you? Any one of you can answer that first. Onaliruna, you up first.
Can you repeat the question again?
No problem, Sissy. What are the benefits of being online for you as a young person?
Okay, it's easy to me sometimes to catch up with my friends, like studies. Yeah, they'll send me some school works. Yeah, that's all. I don't do much online, but it does good things for me sometimes, most of the times.
So you'd say the most beneficial thing is keeping in touch with your friends or getting an education?
What I'm saying basically is that we share books at school sometimes, so they'll share me the pages that I don't have, some sort of things.
Okay, so community and sharing. I like that. And Renasiviwe, what do you find is the most beneficial part of being online?
I mean, mangi online, ngasho ukuthi ngihlezi ngi-updated. Yeah, kwezinto engiyizwile nengingayizwanga about good things and bad. Yeah, la ngingakwazanga ukuthi ngibe khona ne-information ebengiyidinga engayitholanga. Yeah, just keeping the good relationship and noma ngidangele, but mangi ngaba online with my friends, I find myself happy.
Okay, no siyabonga. Vuyolethu, if you could just please, Vuyolethu Mfundisi, if you could mute yourself, please, thank you. Okay, so Siviwe, thank you so much. What I'm hearing from Siviwe is that you are able to reach parts of the world that you actually couldn't reach at Great Town. And it extends you beyond that, which is, I think, the power of the internet. Now, in Tabeleng, knowing ukuthi internet goes beyond Ibekville and goes beyond South Africa, do you sometimes feel unsafe? And if so, what are the things on the internet that make you feel unsafe? Or do you feel safe? Do you not feel threatened at all?
Sometimes I feel unsafe because as abantu abasha iy'ngane like ku-Facebook they bathanda ukufaka iy'thombe zabantu abahle and then bafaka iminyaka ekungayona eyabo, and that is really bad and risk kithi abantu abasebancane.
And uke wathola nje ukuthi khona umuntu owakuthinta wena owumuntu omdala ekuthumela umnyalezo ku-Facebook ezama ukukhuluma ngendlela ekuthusayo?
Cha.
Okay, I guess siyabonga ukuthi usase safe. Onaliruna Osiviwe, how do you feel online? Do you feel safe or do you feel unsafe? You're on mute, Onaliruna. No problem.
I feel safe online. Yeah, I feel safe.
And why do you feel safe? What is it that makes you feel safe? Is it because you've been warned about the threats, or is it education, the time that you spent with your family? What is it that makes you feel safe?
Because I've been taught how to use social media safely by my parents, at school, and here at World Vision. We've been taught and guided by them to do things well on social media. And honestly, I don't really talk to strangers, even though they try to send messages. No, I just look at them and leave them. I don't answer, I don't do anything.
Very smart behavior online. I hope you share that with your friends and your young people eskoleni. Siviwe, I know Guti, you had an opportunity to participate in a World Vision and FPB outreach session. Tell us about what you learned about safety in one of these sessions, or perhaps what you felt you didn't learn and you'd like for us to bring the next time we do something like this.
Mina on my side, ngingasho ukuthi is the information engiyithole from Film and Publication Board together with the World Vision, because banifundisa kakhulu ukuthi abantu abanjani kumele ba-accept ama-request abo, and uma uzizwa unsafe yini kumele uyenze. Just like uma uthola i-request from someone ubona kahle ukuthi awumazi, just don't accept it. And if umuntu ekhuluma into ozwa kahle ukuthi ayiphathi kahle, just block that person uma ungasafuni ukukhuluma naye.
Wonderful. Yeah. That really excites me to hear Uguti you were able to take that. Did you find Uguti after the outreach session in the FPB in the World Vision ubunamandla nemfundo yokukhuluma nabanye abana awesikoleni noma abanawe kumphakathi wakho, ukwazi ukubatshela ukuthi hey lalelani, ngifunda ukuthi akufunakala sikhulume nabantu abanjena, akufunakala sivule indlela kulo muntu umuntu omdala nje mhlawumbe ongakuhlukumeza?
Ngikwazile ukwenza lokho ngoba abanye bebenza just for fun, but benganaki ukuthi ngase kubafake nje in danger.
Absolutely. No, that's really so encouraging to hear that from these outreach sessions, you're able to find knowledge that empowers you and that you're able to share with other people. My last question to you as young people, because like I said, we believe that you're leading the way in our capacity to give you safety online and create tools and create an environment where you are empowering yourself with these tools of safety and cybersecurity in particular. What would you say to civil society and government organizations? Because you have the Deputy Minister of Digital Technologies here today, and you have several partners. There's over 100 people in this room who are all passionate about child protection, especially in the online space. And so for us, we really, we can spend all day researching in libraries, we can do everything that we want to, but you're 15, you're 16, this is your everyday lived experience, and we really would appreciate your leadership in telling us where are the gaps, where do you still feel vulnerable, what can we as citizens and adults and also as government entities do to protect and serve you better. Each of you can give me just 1 point. Ntabeleng, I'll save you for last because I know how shy you are. Let's go with Siviwe first this time. What would you recommend to us to do better for you?
Mina engingakusho that I'm still la ngibona khona ukuthi kusane gap eshodayo. It's to teach parents ukuthi befundise abantwana about parental guidance over TV. Because abantwana babuka izinto say like 16 basewafana lama symbols akhona akhombisayo, maybe NSV, something like that, and still uthola ukuthi umntwana una 12 years noma una 10 usabuka kodwa still, and mayiqeda kubuka lo movie kade kubuka sefuna ukupractice like ifight sefuna nayo ukwenza kwabanye. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we'll definitely take note of that. I know that FPB, World Vision, UNICEF, and the DM are writing away. Empower our parents. Siyabonga Siviwe. Onaliruna wenu batloring.
I want to encourage everybody to do campaigns like this one because it brings, it gives us the strength and it motivates us to do the right things. And I think the campaigns like this one and the posters everywhere about notifications to alert us and for safety. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So you've just given me power to ask our DM for a bigger budget for campaigns. I know that my shared services executive is jumping for joy right now. Did you hear that, DM? We need more campaign power. What would you recommend to us to serve you better?
Engingakusho ukuthi njengabantu abasha kumele siye ukuthi sithande ukwenza izinto ezingakafiki kwi-age yethu because abantu abaningi, ingane eningi ngisho njalo iy'ngane eningi zibuka izinto like bad movies, ama-movie athusayo, then they don't sleep well at night. They must listen what at TV they say. Bayasho bathi akumele ubuke from kuyabhala phezulu ukuthi abantu abana-13 noma from 14 ukuthi ungayibuki. Manje uthola ingane like 9 years seyibuka leyo movie ebusuku ingabisakhona ukulala.
Okay, so into efanayo njengalento besho Putsiviwe, I will then say that it encourages me to hear you say that you know that there are dangers in exposing yourself to harmful content. That's the first step. I think what I'll say back to you as well as the future leaders of this country is that you now know this knowledge that maybe some people don't, especially your contemporaries, abantu abana 15 and other teenagers and your parents. Be the voice in your community. Take the confidence and the knowledge you have and the opportunity that you had to be here today and share it with other people who don't have the opportunity, because I think we'll be stronger together as young people and as civil society and government working together with your leadership. Thank you so much. Siyabonga, re a leboga Sibuwe, ona le rona Nthabeleng. Before you turn your cameras off, I think because I know how passionate our Deputy Minister is about young people, and I'm about to introduce her. Deputy Minister Pinky Kekana is the Deputy Minister of the Communications and Digital Technologies of South Africa, which basically means that all of this 4IR business that you guys are going to be building products for, working with. I know that Onali Rona and Sibuwe want to be doctors. When you're becoming doctors, you guys are going to probably be working with robots. Our Deputy Minister is paving the way for those things to be easier for you. She worked in education, and that's why she's so passionate about young people. And she's been a part of Parliament since 2014, so she really understands how to create acts and mandates and work with legislation to empower our community. But I've been on many campaigns with her, and I know how passionate she is about young people. I know how passionate she is about women. And so I wanted, before you young people left, just for her to have an opportunity to perhaps speak with you. And I will hand it over to our DM. Thank you, Deputy Minister, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Me Nobuntu Dubazana. I know you are representing our council board members today. Let me also recognize our COO, Me Abungile Mashele, and I know amongst us we have Bruce Lazel, who's from World Vision, the national director, but we also have Me Sina Muruani from UNICEF. We also have Me Spindile Ngobo from Save the Children. I'm leaving the best for last, which is our hero and our sheroes, Onalerona, Nthabeleng, and Sibuwe. I was listening attentively, guys. You are our pride, and like Me Dubazana was saying, you must be the voice out there to young people to say, these are the do's and the don'ts online. Let me also recognize mothers and dads who may be joining us online, and also recognize all the ladies and gentlemen who are in the house. And I'm saying, as the Deputy Minister, I greet you as a mother and a parent first. Thank you so much, boy and girls, that you guys are continuing to make us proud, that you'll continue to behave accordingly online. COVID-19 has taught us many things. So you are our mouthpiece out there. I'm not sure if I should continue with my address, May Dubazana, you guide me, but I'm proud with. Okay.
I think maybe I'll let the young people, you guys can mute yourself and turn your video off so that our bandwidth doesn't struggle. But thank you, DM, over to you.
Thank you so much, Medbazana. You always are out there. You one person who's very spectacular and passionate about children, and we continue to be proud of you. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2nd of October 2019 was an important day in South Africa when President Cyril Ramaphosa passed the Films and Publications Amendment Act. The law was passed to protect children from disturbing and harmful content. Importantly, it assists in providing regulatory certainty on the mandate of the FPB for distributors of films and games online and on traditional platforms of content distribution. The bill, which is now the Act, empowers the FPB and its board to take administrative action and issue administrative sanctions against non-compliant distributors. This was a crucial piece of legislation for us as government to keep South Africa's children safe online. So today, as a government representative, I greet you as a parent first. Our president has made us the custodians of these laws and given us mandates. And I trust that we are using these to make an extra effort during COVID-19, when online content consumption has increased dramatically and all forms of abuse and mental illness are on the increase. Ladies and gentlemen, I want us to be cognizant of this, as this means we have to increase our efforts as well to meet the increased changing behavior and usage patterns of children online. The children of our country need our protection more than ever, and we have it within our mandate to do so. Actually, more than a mandate, I believe it is also our responsibility as parents ourselves to protect children on behalf of other parents who may not know and understand how to keep their children safe in the online world. I believe it is our duty as those who know. After all, isn't it the South African way to care and worry about each other's children? Almost a third of South Africa's population is under the age of 15 years. Today we were having a conversation with two 15-year-olds and one 16-year. And as I'm saying, our population is under the age of 15 at about 28.8%. according to a Stats SA 2019 population estimate report. And this means, Program Director, that our country has a very young population with large numbers of potential internet users under the age of 20, opening us up to much risk, making the FPB's mandate extremely critical in terms of the Constitution. South Africa accounts for less than 10% of Africa's internet users, coming in fourth after Nigeria at 28%, Egypt at 14.6%, Kenya at 9.7%, with ours just above 8%. So we still have the opportunity to put solid foundation in place before the number increases. COVID-19 Program Director has given us many opportunities to see what risks can be mitigated, and child online protection is one of the things that are crucial to the country's response to the fourth industrial revolution. To me, it's primarily about the child's rights. The Constitution of South Africa of 1996 addresses children's rights more thoroughly, specifically in Section 28 of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights specifies the protection of children in all forms of risk and exposure, and this would apply to the online world as much as it does to the physical world. In the same way, children's rights are set out in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. That's why you even have UNICEF in our midst, or the UNCRC, and other international and regional human rights instruments, including the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, the UDHR, the UN Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, European Convention for the Protection of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, and the Council of Europe Convention on the Protection of Children against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse. So, it is clear we have many, many instruments to keep our children safe, Program Director. Let's ensure we use these instruments. We have a responsibility and a mandate to educate and make children, parents, teachers, caregivers, and guardians aware of all that they need to know to effectively manage children's activities online. Teaching them how to learn to live with the negatives that are there and how to avoid them is what our role in their lives are. The internet has become an indispensable part of our lives, and during the global pandemic, even more so. But the online world is no different to the offline world, including online safety. And let me give you a scenario to illustrate my point. We spent our entire lives concerned with security issues by living in heavily guarded estates, houses with burglar guards, alarm systems, panic buttons. Cars are the same. The list go on and on. In a bid to giving our children all that we did not have, parents across the world hand over the most expensive gadget or device they can afford without any security being put on it. In this scenario, there is no limit to what children are exposed to and the influence and impact it has for the rest of their lives. The high-tech security system in the physical world did not protect that child from a cyberbully or worse, a pedophile. It is these risks, Program Director, that we are mandated to mitigate through the Film and Publications Board. Today, we stand at the cusp of a new normal, at a time in history when we will have the opportunity to do things better and with more mindfulness as we forge new paths or develop stronger existing ones. Let technology and the role of the internet in the lives of our children continuously be that thing that we consistently do better at. Because quite frankly, it is an area where our work will never be quite done. Our children are not just our future. We have had them now, Onalena, Siviwe, and Ntabele. They are our legacy. We are because of who came before us, and so shall they be because of what we do for them today. Thank you very much, and let's continue to protect our children online. Well done to you, FPB, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for your address and for the confidence that you show in the Film and Publication Board. I think, speaking for the rest of my colleagues, I know many of us are very passionate about the work that we do, especially when it comes to the protection of children. And I know that we do all our best all the time to make sure that we are carrying out the mandate that the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies places in us. I also am thankful that you brought to the fore so clearly that the parents are, critical in protecting our children as well. And the fact that we have certain legislation that also helps us to do that. So Deputy Minister, I know at the beginning you indicated that you're multitasking and that you're also involved quite heavily in a session that's happening in Parliament. So we thank you very much for the time that you've been able to give us today. And I would also like us to just take a minute and think about the new normal that you've spoken about, Deputy Minister, because I think it brings our digital world so much more to the fore, and it makes us see the benefits that are there. I know we're here today to talk about protecting children in that digital space, but I think that the benefits is something we must never lose sight of. We need to be able to use the benefits that come with the digital world while we also mitigate the challenges. And it's exactly that the Film and Publication tries to do. We're in this brave new digital frontier, and there's a very steep learning curve for many of us in our quest to protect the future leaders of our country. So I would like to ask, as our next speaker, for our Acting Chief Executive Officer and Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Abongile Mashele, to please give us a little bit more of a background on what the Film and Publication, the work that we do, and what we aim to be achieving in the near future. Abongile?
Thank you so much, Lynette. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our partners who have made this webinar possible. We appreciate the partnerships with World Vision, UNICEF, Save the Children, South Africa, partners that have been long-standing and working with us in championing the rights of the child in South Africa. We hope that we can continue to work with each other to advance, to continue to advance the protection of children, particularly in this day and age. And I think also, just to add on to what Lynette has just said, to show appreciation to the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as the department in joining us today. And a warm welcome and a hearty welcome to everyone in this very cold Friday afternoon. I think it's cold across the country. It's not just in Gauteng. My role for today is really a straightforward one, a very easy one, to talk about who we are as the FPB and what do we do as the Film and Publication Board. The Film and Publication Board actually plays a very unique role in the child protection space. We all understand that a child has many dynamics to them. A child needs shelter, a child needs food, a child needs an education. But when the Film and Publications Board was actually established, there was a realization that the child as well gets entertained through films, through games, and through certain publications. So as they consume all of those things, the child needs to be adequately protected, because in certain instances, they may be consuming something that is not suitable for them. So that is why in 1996, when they established the Film and Publication Board, it was a realization that we need to have things like age ratings for children, so that when they watch movies, the parents and who are their guardians, they know exactly what type of content is there, and if it is content that is suitable for children or not suitable for children. But as we have evolved and as technology has grown, we've actually realized that the role of the Film and Publication Board has expanded, and it has become bigger than just films for entertainment purposes. Films, games, technology has become such an integral part of life that we've also had to up our game as the Film and Publication Board to ensure that there is adequate protection. We will all know that in this day and age, children use technology for entertainment. They use technology, films and games for educational purposes as well. So it's definitely not something that we can do away with and say, let's go and hide in the nearest corner, or let's take the gadgets away from our children. But what we should be asking ourselves is, how best can we safeguard and protect children in this new digital world? So as the FPB, over the years, we've actually developed interesting regulatory tools that we have rolled out since 1996. So one of the things that we do as the Film and Publication Board, if you want to operate in the South African market, you need to be registered. So your distributors like your Stekenico, talking about now the physical market, those are required to be registered with the FPB, and they register with us before they can trade in the South African market. Your online streaming platforms like your Showmax and your Netflixes are required to register with the board. And then the second thing that obligation that is there in terms of our regulatory role as the FPB is to ensure that material that is distributed in the South African market is classified and it bears an age restriction that is reflective of the South African values and norms. Now, this is the catch. Reflective of the South African values and norms. The South African values and norms will not be the same as the values and norms in the US market. That is why the age restrictions will differ, because the sensitivities of cultures in the different countries will differ. So we are also required to classify material, and we allocate age ratings. One of the things that we have done over the years is to develop a a rating system that we can say can stand amongst the best in the world, a rating system that has been tested in many instances in a court of law, that basically can be utilized by anyone, which is why even now with the online streaming market, our classification system and our classification guidelines, we say to someone who wants to stream material, here is a rating system that you can use and you can apply by yourself, and you can see when you are watching a movie, what would fit a 13 age category as opposed to a 16 age category. So we classify material and we develop classification guidelines. The third thing that we do is to monitor compliance. So everyone that has been registered, and even those that have not been registered, we monitor compliance to the Film and Publications Act. And then last but not least, which has become an even more critical component to our mandate, is to educate consumers, because an empowered consumer is able to self-regulate their own behavior to a certain extent. Because if I, as a parent, know the impact that harmful content can have on my child, it is easier for me to regulate the behavior in my household, and it is easier for me to regulate the behavior of my child and monitor and ensure that my child does not get exposed to harmful content. So we focus a lot on consumer education, and we would love more budget, Mr. Bazana, as you've noted, so that we could do more public education. And we partner a lot with various institutions to assist us with that education, consumer education mandate. Because as we move more into the digital age, digital literacy is going to be one of the most critical life skills that you can give to any child. Because once they are digitally literate, they can then self-regulate and self-monitor and know the do's and don'ts in the online space. In summary, that's who we are as the FPB. That's what we do, and I think that's about all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abongile, and I think you've done a good job in summarizing the multiple facets that we have as the Film and Publication Board. And I think you touched on something towards the end that for me is really important, and that we are striving to, through our outreach and education, to have a society that self-regulates, especially when it comes to our children. We want to have them empowered in such a way that they will know for themselves, just like our young learners earlier was saying. I think it was Onalerona that was saying, you know, that she's been taught well. That's why she doesn't feel unsafe on the internet. And that's where we want to get as an organization and as a society, that we're almost regulating ourselves instead of having to have a policeman like the FPB doing it for us. I also think one of the most important things for us is that this, like I was saying, you know, self-regulation is not something that will come through one organization working alone. And I think as the Film and Publication Board, that's why we have such a big focus on creating partnerships and creating lasting partnerships, which is why we are so grateful to our partners today, and specifically to World Vision, who've made their platform available to us today and have also assisted us with the technical side of things. So I would like to also then now give an opportunity to the National Director of World Vision, Mr. Bruce Lazell, an opportunity to also address us.
Thank you so much, Lynette. So as required, all protocols reserved, but I would really just like to say thank you for the Deputy Minister for taking the time out for such a critical or for such critical support of this this initiative, this committee, and this focus. To know that we've got government really interested and really invested in child protection is so heartening, because without your support, we would be nowhere. So ladies and gentlemen, I just want to spend a few minutes sharing with you who World Vision is. Maybe some of you do know us, and I just want to have a presentation if that's okay. So I'm hoping that you can see it. And somebody just let me know whether you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Good.
Perfect. So World Vision is one of the world's biggest NGOs. We are in 100 countries. We've got about 40,000 staff. And our focus is completely on children and the well-being of children. So our vision is for a secure childhood for all. At World Vision, we believe every child deserves to be protected from violence, live a full life, and have a chance to become who God created them to be. We help communities build a safety net of loving people to protect children, prevent harm, and ensure that those who are harmed receive the help they need to recover. So our whole organization globally and here in South Africa is all about the child. We want to give children the absolute fullest life they can have. And that means we have to be involved, critically involved, centrally involved, and practically involved in ensuring that all children are protected. So we like to talk about what we call our power claims, and these are absolutely verified. So every 60 seconds, a family gets water. Every 60 seconds, a hungry child is fed. Every 60 seconds, a family receives the tools to overcome poverty. That is the work that World Vision does globally. And together we've impacted the lives of over 200 million vulnerable children by tackling the root causes of poverty. In South Africa, just for context, our COVID response is planning to hit the lives of 480,000 children. So the global organization has 70 years of experience. We've got 53 years of experience here in South Africa fighting against inequality and fighting for children's rights all of that time. We work with communities, donors, partners, and with government to create opportunities for better futures for vulnerable children. And we're not afraid to work in the toughest places in the world. And in fact, if you have a look at where we're working in South Africa at the moment, it really is in some of the most vulnerable rural areas where the lives of children are sometimes forgotten. We want to make sure that they're not forgotten and that they know that they are special, loved, and regarded well, and we will protect them. So we serve alongside the poor, the oppressed, as a demonstration of God's unconditional love for all people. World Vision serves all people, regardless of religion, race, ethnicity, or gender. Our approach to ending violence against children is to protect them today and empower them for tomorrow, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later. We do this by equipping them, their communities, and local partners with the tools to address the root causes of violence against them. So we absolutely want to focus on the children, but we know that children's protection is best done by the community within which they live. And so we want to make sure that we equip the communities and the people who serve in those communities to understand the value of children, to understand their rights, and to make sure that they're protected. So we empower communities, we educate communities to set their own goals and lead their own development so that progress made is sustained. And this is really important for us. We are not an organization that goes into a community, hands out food parcels, and disappears. We stay up to 15 years in a community where we really seek to educate, empower, and create sustainable livelihoods within those environments so that the community itself starts to look after itself, look after its children for long after we have lived. So we are involved in raising awareness of online digital safety for children themselves, so absolutely directed at children, but also for their parents, caregivers, and other child protection champions. So we know that this is such a critical part of a child's life now, and increasingly so. We all know that it doesn't need to be reset. But our children need to firstly have access and have wide access. Why do they need to have wide access? Because the people that are sitting in the communities we serve and the communities that you all serve are the people who are going to find the cure to cancer. They're the people who are going to be sending satellites to space. They're the people who are going to actually be fighting for the rights of all humans. They're the people who are going to be developing the child protection systems of the future that will stop pedophiles getting access to people, that will stop online bullying. Those people are the children of today who we need to protect. And that's why I love this thought on this slide. It says, protect her today and empower her for tomorrow. And that's really what we've got to see. It's yes, of course, it's about now. It's about education and putting in place the legislation, the systems, the passion of individuals like everybody on this call, so that our children are protected today. But it's important we protect them today, because protecting them today gives them a future. Protecting them today will allow them to reach the potential that they have. So we want to absolutely encourage full digital access in 100% of South Africa. Every child needs to be able to get online, because that immediately creates access to fantastic education opportunities, fantastic opportunities to learn about different cultures, to learn about different sciences, to learn about different languages. And through that education, they will become great, great leaders of our time. And I really, truly believe this. The great leaders of our time are people like this young girl in this picture, who today might be subsistence farming, but possibly through her parents' cell phone, she gets access to some kind of education, and she then flourishes, and then she's the one who stops another pandemic from entering the world. That is the potential we have here, and that's why we have to protect her. So I want to encourage everyone on this call to think big, to think what can we do? Sure, we can talk about it. We can have many workshops like this, and they're absolutely valuable. But what are some of the big things we can do? How do we really put pressure on government to say, we absolutely support freedom of speech and access to information, but the people who provide that, let them understand their obligation to put in the systems that protect children. I think that the Film and Publications Board should think about all of the providers, all of the cell phone networks, the Wi-Fi providers, the ISPs, anyone who's involved in this environment, setting up a fund. It can be a voluntary fund, but let's set up a fund where that money can be used by organizations like ourselves and like many people on this call today to go out and educate people. Because it's not only about the systems, it's not only about the technology, but it's about the face-to-face grassroots communication, the education, the gathering people in classrooms and schools and talking about the truth and the dangers. And I just loved the children earlier talking about the fact that some of them had been approached with inappropriate messaging, but they chose to ignore it. Why? Because they were educated and they were empowered. And that came about because someone either educated them directly, or someone educated their parents or their teachers or their caregivers directly. So let's try and push funds into environments that allow us to do that more. Let's try and hold the providers of technology to account, to start putting in place better filters so that we can catch the people who are perpetrating terrible things against children. And of course, we want the laws to get stricter and stricter so that if you do perpetrate anything against children online, it's as bad as it would be if it was in person, and those punishments should be severe. So thanks so much for listening to me, for listening to who World Vision is, and what a privilege to be with you all today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lazel, for that insights into what World Vision does. I think for us to hear the fact that there's so much work being done and to hear the sort of request that we work together more closely. I think also coming through very clearly on our chat line, people are already making connections and networking on the chat line. So if you haven't been following the chat line, I think you need to get on there and see what's happening, because people are sharing details and they're connecting. And I think that's one of the more important things that we need to take out of our session today, is that we cannot do anything by ourselves. Together we are stronger. So I would really ask people, go onto the chat line, see what's going on there, leave your details, ask for people to connect with you. And I think we can take this webinar a step further and do greater things together. Mr. Lazel has also spoken very clearly about the need for freedom of expression in some senses to be curbed when it comes to the protection of our children. And that is something that echoes quite well with us at the Film and Publication Board, because it's something that we find difficult to navigate many times, especially when it comes to the work we do in regulating content of films and games, where one person's poison you know, one person's poison is maybe something that the next person wants. So freedom of expression is one of those things that are very, very tricky. It's almost a minefield for us to navigate through often. And especially when it comes to the internet, social media, freedom of expression, often you're tramping on the toes of someone else's rights. And I think you know, when we come to things like the rights of children, we have with us UNICEF today, and they're globally one of the big players when it comes to rights, and especially children's rights. So I'm glad to have with us here Sina Muruwane, who's the online safety project manager at UNICEF SA. And I would like her to assist us to understand a bit more about the rights that sit at the base of protecting our children. Because it's not only about children knowing what their rights are, but it's also about children knowing the responsibility to respect someone else's rights. And I think with that as a basis, our society can easily overcome this challenge of how do we keep our children safe online. Before I give the floor over to Sina from UNICEF, I just want to remind everybody, we are checking the chat line for your questions. And although there's a lot of networking happening, which is brilliant, I'm not getting very many questions coming through. So I want to ask, as we go into the guest speakers that we have on our program today, that please ask some questions so that we have some questions to answer when we get to the Q&A section. So Sina, I'm going to stop sharing the slide here, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Lynette, our facilitator, and to also thank the participants who actually joined us on this webinar, but also a special word of recognition to the Minister, Deputy Minister, who graced us this afternoon, and all protocol observed, as rightfully said. I would like to share my presentation. And my presentation, as indicated, will be touching on the rights of children, opportunities, as well as the risk that children can face online. And in doing so, I'm not going to labor much on the instruments that the Deputy Minister covered so well, that whenever we discuss issues of online protection, we should know that it is really premised, you know, on the CRC, which is the Convention on the Rights of the Child, on the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, as well as our Constitution. I think the Deputy Minister was very clear on that. I'm not going to really go into detail with that, but also, you know, to focus on the new normal that has actually confronted us as a country. COVID-19 has really introduced us to do things differently. And I think one of the key issues is the virtual platforms that we are all really gravitating towards. And whilst we are there, we also need to really observe the opportunities that come with virtual platforms, which we can really not deny, but also to acknowledge the fact that, yes, there are risks that are also, you know, really sort of attached to that. Yes, we have been talking about the rise of children, and we know for a fact that in all the instruments, especially the three that I have alluded to above, you know, the best interest of the child is of paramount importance. Yes, we know for a fact that, you know, constitutionally, people have the right, and children have rights as well, you know, the right for empowerment, which we all know, the right to information, you know, the right for freedom of expression, as well as the right to participation. But yes, there is a very fine line when actually we have to zoom into the issues of protection, where we have to ensure that for the child, you know, the protection of children from violence, exploitation, and abuse is always of paramount significance. So we should be able to really sort of balance that and ensure that, okay, no child will actually be exploited on the basis of actually saying, no, this child has the right for actually expression, or the right to access information, or the right to whatever. We should always really take very vigilant actions of actually ensuring that children are protected. What are the risks that children can actually come across online, children can actually come across, or get exposed to violent images. I'm very happy that our young people, that I really also appreciate their presence this afternoon, touched on things that they experienced, their lived experiences. They indicated to us that, there are those children that actually, despite the age restrictions, they overlook that and actually sort of navigate, the digital platforms that expose them to violent images, like, adult pornography, where actually I don't think any parent, as DM has said, will really be comfortable to see or actually to hear that her child or his child has actually been exposed to pornography. Sometimes also children themselves put themselves really at risk, by really going into detail, by really navigating, even, the terrains that they are supposed not to really navigate. And in that instance, I think, film and publication plays a very important role of really classifying content. And if and only if our children can understand that actually if this content is not meant for me to consume, I cannot be able to really sort of keep on viewing this content because there is age restriction, I should actually shy away from that. That will be, in one way or the other, one of the measures that will be actually protecting them. Children are also actually victims from their own peers. I think we all know that cyberbullying, it is going on and on and on. And sometimes it humiliates children to an extent where they feel so disempowered. They become suicidal, they become anxious, they get into depression. And basically because their own peers are the ones that are actually humiliating them online. And the issue of sexual abuse and exploitation. This goes a long way. We know for a fact that those very same online friends, that our kids meet online are the ones that at times have this, malicious intentions of actually prying on them, actually grooming them, so that at the end of the day, they are in the position to let them do things that are not correct. So we are saying as UNICEF, we need to look at, how actually, the access to digital space is advancing so quick. I'm happy that DM covered the local context. She actually clearly indicated, the extent of internet use in our country. But I need to share with you that, that we have the organization that we call the We Protect Global Alliance, that yearly or on yearly basis, they conduct a risk threat assessment, where actually they look at the vulnerability of children online, but they also look at internet usage. They've indicated in 2018, 2019 that just for that particular year, there were 367 million new internet users. And if this happened in 2018, I can assure you it will be worse in 2020. Deputy Minister touched on that. 122 million more children joined, the internet or the online platform. And this attested to what UNICEF is also saying, that 1 in 3 internet users is actually a child. So it can really sort of reflect to us here that children are actually using the internet as well. And I think Onale Rona Seviwe and Tabeleng have attested to that. What is also concerning is the increase in the number of child photos where actually children have been sexually abused that were reported to tech companies. And tech companies like your Google Africa, and others, Microsoft, are really doing their best to ensure that they really sort of delete this content. But we know for a fact that it is always not very easy. And also there is an increase of child sexual abuse material, and I'm not going to labor much on that. But also just to touch on this slide and say, whilst we are appreciating all what is coming with digital platforms, that's your virtual learning, your online gaming, your internet connection, your social media and all that, we also need to really recognize the fact that, the very same virtual platforms really create, a risk and threats for our children, where people who are predators, pedophiles, really navigate these platforms to really just catch on our children and ensure that at the end of the day, they can actually sort of violate them, abuse them, sexually as well. And what is important, and I think DM touched on this, is that there is quite a very clear correlation between the online and the offline, sexual abuse and exploitation of children, where actually it can start both ways. It can start online and end up offline, or even the offline, where actually a person can just decide to take pictures of this child and finally as well ensure that this is distributed, in the internet. So we really need to ensure that we protect our children, because this ends up in a situation where really children end up having suicidal tendencies. And if we are not going to really sort of raise our voice now, join our hands and work towards protecting children, we really run a risk of really sort of losing them. The global threat assessment that I talked of actually touches on 4 key areas: the global technology trends, the social environment down there, the offender, and the victim. If you look at that diagram, it clearly indicates to you that what presents as opportunities for offenders actually present as risk for the victim, where actually the offender use the technology, they use the social environment context to actually amplify the work that they are doing. But on the other hand, where the victim is actually looking at using the very same platforms for benefit, the victim end up actually facing a lot of risk and end up actually experiencing a lot of harm. How does this happen? Just to take you briefly through this, is that offenders seek new sexual abuse material all the time. So what they do, they go to web forums, they go to digital space, they use new ideas and new texts, and afterwards they are able to really sort of obtain the images that they want, whether that is being done in person or live stream or through grooming or videos, and they finally share that actually with others online, who have sexual interest. And the cycle goes on, it never stops. And they also forever research and actually want to have new, exciting, new material on our children, where actually then they can either use this for their own leisure, especially pedophiles and the like, or actually to use this for commercial purposes, where they share this in order to get money. So you can see that some people even use this as business, to earn a living. So we really need to be up in arms and to see how best we can protect our children. So they are very quick as offenders to capitalize on technology, and the victim behavior sometimes enhances the threat. But what we need to look at is that online crimes against children are really increasing and thriving, and we need to stop them. And actually, how can I put it? Let me say the critical part of the offenders, or the clever part that they are using, is that at all times they want to stay anonymous. So they are able to really use the very sophisticated processes of encryption and actually ensure that the message is transmitted between the sender and the receiver, and even the interception thereof becoming very difficult for you to see the content thereof. So they are as well embarking on research, and it's high time that we should also really sort of up our research skills and acumen. So problems that occur online are not unique, as we all agree, and they need to be conceptualized holistically and by multiple actors or layer of actors. And I think Bruce has touched on that, to say we really need to work together. It can never be, a one-man show. So when we want to really ensure that we use our investment, we actually use our greater cooperation, we need to look at how best we can use all this to really protect children from any harmful practices. And staying connected is very important for us, as actors in this field. But what is important also is that whilst we are harnessing the opportunities of the digital age, we need to ensure that really every child is benefiting from it. Bruce touched on it, the inequities that actually sort of, touches on the lives of our children. I would like to touch on what, again, the We Protect Global Alliance is doing. I've talked about their threat assessment, but they also provided us with what we call the model of national response, which is basically just a framework that help countries to establish and actually develop a coordinated national response to address issues of online protection for children. And this framework really, it calls for everybody. It calls for the industry, it calls for civil society organizations, communities. Everybody actually has a responsibility to play, including children themselves. And I'm really impressed by what I heard from the children who were saying they also have a responsibility sometimes to just ignore harmful content. And that really does not come easy. It really comes with a lot of empowerment. These are the 6 pillars of that model of national response, but I'll rather move to the following slide, which talks to the content of the pillars. That says the first pillar is actually on policy and governance. On this pillar, we need to ensure that there is high-level commitment to prevent and to respond to online child violence. And this actually calls not only for us as duty bearers or technical people on the ground, but it calls also for the political leadership. And maybe I need to just mention that unfortunately for South Africa, we have not yet signed up to become a member of the We Protect Global Alliance, but the processes are unfolding, and I think the Department of Social Development is quite aware of the importance of belonging to this movement. I've seen Gian has joined us, and I think she will further go and talk about the importance of actually stepping up the game when we really want to protect children online. When we talk about the criminal justice system, we're looking at an effective system that is actually carrying investigations when reports are made, that is actually ensuring that prosecution is being embarked on, and that conviction and relevant penalties are actually addressed or given to the people who are actually becoming harmful to children online. And the victims, who in most instances in this instance are children, we need to ensure that actually we prevent even our children actually being victims of online violence. But where actually this happens, it is very key that we should ensure that they really get enough services to support them, they get counseling, they get actually mental health and psychosocial support, and actually to ensure that really they bounce back and operate, like, fully fledged, citizens in the country. The society, as pillar number 4, also has responsibility. Has responsibilities to play. The society has to ensure that, there is a lot of prevention that needs to happen. And as rightfully said, the society calls for everybody. As a mother, as a grandmother, I need to ensure that my children are actually sort of, safe when they are actually navigating the digital platform. And that actually their experiences with the digital platform is actually the one that is positive. So it's a responsibility that we all share. The industry, we were with Google South Africa last week when we had another webinar with DSG. They clearly articulated their responsibilities and indicated that they've got a big responsibility of ensuring that they protect children as well online. And they should actually also assist us in ensuring that they actually delete those harmful images, those images that are humiliating our children, to ensure that at the end of the day, really, children don't actually get stuck with what they will have shared, being excited, that actually remains, in the digital space for the rest of their life. And media and communications, I think we've got, people who really need to ensure that really we create more awareness, we actually ensure that we advocate for the rights of children, and that actually children are protected online through our policies, through our programs, through our strategies, and through everything that we'll be doing to provide services to children. Coming home, UNICEF already has some work that is actually being happening in the country in partnership with some organizations, and I'm happy that UNICEF is part of this webinar, and I think that's where good things will also, continue filtering through. UNICEF is already partnering with the Department of Social Development. We have actually, liaised with UNISA, who is our implementing partner, to conduct a national study on the assessment of online protection of children, but also to really look at how children are being affected by online violence in South Africa. Immediately when the findings of this study are available, this will be shared with the public broadly, and these findings will actually inform programming. UNICEF is also working with GST. We are already working on awareness raising, and thanks World Vision and thanks Film and Publication Board that we are also doing some awareness raising. So it's simply just as we should come together and strengthen our muscle to actually ensure that we are able to cover each and every person, so that then everybody, even we know our goggles, who really don't even understand how to use these very same gadgets or cell phones, we should really sort of be able to take everybody on board. It cannot be excluded. just, on the basis of the fact that they cannot operate the modern devices. We need to also ensure that we train people. I'm telling you, we are training every day. And I think, Nabontu, you are a witness. You have been training and training. But basically what is critical is that it is not, the choice that we have made, and we don't have time to choose what we want to do. But what is important is that we need to train everybody. We need to train people to understand, technology, but also to understand the positives as well as the negatives or the risks that actually come across with that. We need to look at training teachers. We are looking at training civil society organizations, parents. We are looking at even training law enforcement, officers, so that they can understand that if a case is reported on online, violence, they should be able to embrace that and move with that, in the speed that is required. Children, my beautiful children, you are not exempted from taking responsibility as well. Yes, you are very empowered, as far as technology is concerned. We need to ensure that you've got knowledge now and information on how to navigate the platforms safely and positively. Onanarona, you have mentioned it, that you are only stable because of the capacity and the guidance of your parents. So it is important that for all of us, we become parents to all children, and ensure that children are able to say no to the content that is harmful to them, but also to ensure that the very same children, the very same Onalerona, Ontabeleng and Siviwe, you are supposed to be the voice of the other children. You should be able to support each other and to ensure that you protect each other. You become each other's keeper, so that then if there is anything that someone talks about that is, you know for a fact that it is not good, that I have actually taken my picture or my naked picture and I'm sending it to my partner, or I'm sending it, for this and this, just be a keeper and say to a person, please don't do that. That can really pose a lot of risk to you. So we need to really be there and be vigilant for each other. For parents, all of us who are connected at this webinar, we've got a challenge as well. We need to support our children. We need to ensure that we give guidance, but we also need training, we need tools, we need safety tips. But at the end of the day, what is important is that we should be able to understand how best to interact and engage with our children. You don't take the gadget away, but you actually create an open discussion platform where the child will be able to engage with you if they have met, harmful content online. And therefore, you should be able to respond and report any harmful CCC, which is actually the contact, the content, and the conduct that is online that is actually not conducive for children. And we really need to really ensure that we balance the time. We balance the time, the screen time, and to know when our children should engage in the internet, when they should be on their devices, when they should now be engaging with their friends, as Siviwe was saying, but also how do we regulate that so that really they don't get stuck on these devices, and most of the time find themselves really sitting there and even ignoring, the life that is going in the house, because a person can just sit there and start looking at the screen and forget that I'm even with other people in the house. So we need to ensure that we create that culture, the culture of knowing, when it is enough, and the culture of knowing what is being actually, engaged on. And if it's about a person or online friend, who is this person that the child is actually engaging with? But also to be quick in assessing and symptoms of distress and anxiety. You are the parent. If you know that your child likes this gadget, all of a sudden you find this cell phone lying everywhere, you must be concerned and say, why is this cell phone now here? Because I know this person during this time and this time, this person is busy with this. But why now this child is no more actually using this? That should be some kind of a red flag to you, that maybe your child might be experiencing some kind of, very kind of uncomfortable engagement online, and you should be able to open that conversation for discussion. So we should, as parents, always have hotlines and helplines numbers available, so that if there is a need, you are able to really sort of reach out to a child, not only your child, but any other child, and say, my child, you can actually contact this number for you to get help. So this is very important, and all what I can say to the children is that, please, children, take us along. We are not as, conversant as you are on the digital space. So we still need your, coaching, we still need your mentoring, but do it honestly and know that if actually I'm aware of what you are doing, I will be able to say to you, let this be a schedule, let's work according to this, and let's ensure that you are safe. So to you all, the duty bearers who are here, you've got a responsibility. It is not only Film and Publication or World Vision or UNICEF, all of us. This challenge is big and we cannot just really give it to certain organizations. So all of us as actors, we need to work together and reach out to each and everyone, and say, how can I help you? Or I've got this to offer. How best can you utilize my skill so that we can really help the young generation and help ensure that we really protect our children. I am at the end of my presentation, and all what I can do is to thank you and to really sort of now take back, the ropes to Lynette. Over.
Thanks so much, Sina, and I think thanks for a very lively presentation. If you look at the chat when you have a chance, I know you probably have been presenting, so you haven't been looking, but people have been indicating thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks especially for the statistics that you've been mentioning. I think it would have related to your global threat assessment. So if maybe on the chat line, you can also just, now that you're done, Sina, you can let people know where they can get hold of your presentation and some of the statistics that was in it. I know we had a couple of questions like that. And then I like the fact that you've spoken about parents engaging with children, because I think that's where the crux lies as well when it comes to us empowering our children. First, we need to empower ourselves as parents and then empower our children. And thanks for bringing that through clearly. Also, the fact that you do such a lot of work in the communities with like law enforcement, with training the older people, training parents. And I think that's also reflected a lot in the work that Film and Publication Board does. And I know many of the NGOs that have joined us today probably do similar things. So we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And I think today might be the first step in us all working together a bit more closely on the outreach programs that we do. Some of the young people that are with us have also requested on the chat line that we need to come and come into their communities as well. So let's make this the start of something bigger, and the start of talks towards a bigger program. I think also mentioned on the chat line was the fact that why is education not involved in something like teaching our children safety online? And that's another important question we need to ask ourselves, as people working in this space, organizations working in the spaces. Let's find a way to reach out and see how we can escalate and we can increase the impact of what we do. I also now just want to hand over to our Child Protection Officer, Malachema Poto, who is standing by to give us a bit more insight on what we do at the Film and Publication Board, specifically when it comes to online behavior of our children. Malachema, if you can take us through your presentation.
Just before, because I know, and I'm sorry for really interrupting.
No
can I ask our acting CEO to make sure that all the presentations, we are able to get them. And I want us to make a follow-up, especially on the partnerships that UNICEF and DSD have, so that we too are on board because of our strategic role as the FPB. And then I be part of some of those things, Abongile, so that we take it up. And I know Madwazan will also be part of that. Let's make sure some of these partnerships and the programs and initiatives that are taking place between UNICEF and DSD in trying to protect the children's, our children online and other related things, we follow through some of those things. It should not be only isolated to UNICEF, but it should be all other strategic partners that FPB have, so that we become active participants in those things. Ne?
Yes, DM, we definitely will do that.
Great, thanks, DM, for that input. I think it's what we need to do going forward is find ways of escalating and working together. Malachema, over to you.
Thank you, Lynette. I would like to start off by extending my greetings to our Deputy Minister for being here today with us, our council members, our council chair, and to all our child protection stakeholders who are taking part today, and of course our parents and everyone who is in this webinar session today. And as I mentioned, I am the Child Protection Officer with the Film and Publication Board. And our COO did mention that as the FPB, our overall overarching responsibility is to make sure that children are protected from harmful content, to make sure that the use of children, the creation of pornography, the exposure of children to pornography is also punishable by law. So, but on today's presentation, I just want us to look at the overall view of like online space, online behavior, how are children interacting online? What are the dangers that they are actually faced with as they interact on the online space? But first, I want to just give a brief background on how our digital, usage is looking like around the world. So, it has been noted that around 5.19 billion people actually have cell phones. They use cell phones, and out of that number, 4.54 billion people actually are internet users, and we've got around 3.80 billion people who are actually active social media users. Now, when we bring it to the South African context, we know that like today in 2020, we've got around 58.93 million people living in South Africa. And out of all that number, we find that we have around 103.5 million people who are actually connected, by mobile phone to the public. And also we find that there is about 36.54 million people who are actually internet users and 22 million social media users in our country as a whole. And what we have found is that most of our people who are actually using the internet, or we can say social media all in all, their focus mainly is on WhatsApp, right? And then YouTube, then Facebook and Facebook Messenger, including Instagram. Those are the top 5 sites that are being used today. But also bringing it back to how we as the Film and Publication Board have that responsibility to make sure that our content is classified so that parents and caregivers can make informed viewing choices for their children. One thing that we always go back to is that when children see particular things being done in the environment, they take from the environment. The environment is their stimulus. So we always say monkey see, monkey do. And like in the field of psychology, in the field of social work, we're always being educated that children learn from the environment. What they see in the environment, especially at a young age, that becomes their reality. And when that becomes their reality, it becomes their stimulus. And they act according to what they see their environment give to them. So we are actually the ones who are setting out, how children should be able to behave. What type of content are we exposing our children to? Therefore, that's the type of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. Because when a child sees like a violent image, they think for them that is reality. That is how the whole world is doing things. A 5-year-old who's exposed to violent tendencies, you will see that even in the household, they will just slap someone else for no reason. Why? Because the type of content they are exposed to is educating them, and it's alerting them to know that it's actually fine to react that way. It's fine to act in a particular way, because we always say that children live in a world of fantasy in that whatever they see is their reality. They do not have the ability to actually do a bit of abstract thinking like an adult would, to be able to say, you know what, this is violent, I'm a child, I can't do it. But what they see becomes their reality. And not only children are the ones who are actually depend on the environment that they live in terms of their behavior. But also we find that our teenagers as well are also, you know, very much influenced by the environment, their behavior, you know, with the rise of pop culture, with the rise of social media, and the fact that almost everything out there is so sexualized. What that means is that that becomes the reality for most of our youth today, unfortunately, that in order for me to be liked, in order for me, you know, to be seen by other people, to be recognized, I have to act a particular way. That is why a lot of sex tapes are going around. We have had so many incidences reported to the FPB where children have created content themselves that is of a sexual nature, because we live in a world where it's fine to do that. But actually, is it fine? No, it's not. But because the world is telling us, it's telling our children that in order for you to be liked, in order for you to be acknowledged, then you need to act a particular way. And therefore, children end up acting that way. Our teenagers act that way. And I think one of the risks that we are actually faced with all of this is that when, especially young children who are exposed to violence, when they become desensitized to violence, what happens is that they grow up believing that it's okay for me to act a particular way. And for others, it becomes their way of actually dealing with, you know, issues that they can't deal with, dealing with conflict. For them, they no longer look for other methods, but they actually tend to violence. Others become violent because, like I mentioned, that lack of empathy is gone. So for them, that's their reality. They see nothing wrong with that. And I believe that none of us wants to raise children in that type of culture that actually promotes violence. And I believe that's the reason that we as the FPB, we do the work that we do to make sure that children are protected from harmful content, to make sure that children are actually protected from premature exposure to adult experiences, so that children are exposed to such content when they are at an age where they can rationally think, where they can abstractly think and understand exactly what is put in front of them, what it means, you know, to an extent where they can be able to understand everything in context and not just view things as they are. Hence, we have our age ratings as the Film and Publication Board, and we've got our classifiable elements, not only just for films or video games only, but also on your DVDs and such, so that whatever content that a parent is purchasing for their child, whether be it online or in a physical store, is actually, you know, well regulated, well classified, so that parents can make informed viewing choices for their children, and of course for themselves as well as caregivers to children. Now, what we have noticed in terms of the online space is that it has, you know, so many positives. Like our young people have spoken today. Today, because of the COVID-19 situation, children cannot go to school. They could not go to school for quite a while. So that means that it's an educational tool. You know, people can no longer interact with their loved ones on a daily basis because of the distancing that needs to be adhered to. So it brings like people who are far apart closer together. And those are some of the positives that we actually need to note. But also in taking the positives into account, we also need to look at what are the risks that our children are being faced with. And the risks now extend just beyond the physical things that might happen to them, but also the psychosocial effects, you know, being on the online space might have. As most of you or some of you or others might not know, like there's been a rise in a lot of children who have developed narcissistic personality disorder. And I personally like to refer to it as the me phenomena. So everything is about them. So when everything is about them, there's lack of empathy for other people's feelings. And hence we have those cases where a video will go viral that is shot by another person of another child being abused or children being in a fight, so that they can get likes because they shot that video. So they don't care about the impact of sharing such a video has on the other person or the person who's the victim in all of that. But they care about the fact that I saw it first, I streamed it first, my page has a lot of likes, therefore I am popular and the world likes me. And that is actually not the truth. But because we live in a world where social media almost rules everything, that becomes reality for most of young people. And looking at that, we are also seeing now the whole idea of body dysmorphia coming about, where because the social media is telling young people that in order for you to be liked, in order for you to be considered beautiful and sexy, you need to look a particular way. What happens is that most of our children, young as 12, 13, they are so focused on how they look. They are always looking for flaws in their appearance. They're always looking for something wrong and trying to fix it, because the world is telling them that whatever way that you look, you don't look fine. There is something bad that needs to be done. And therefore, what that means is that we're seeing a rise in psychological, challenges in our children, in mental illness, because of social media and the digital world, in essence. And the other thing that we have also noted is that there is a higher rate of suicide, like Mamsina has mentioned, amongst young people in South Africa. Why? Because the environment that they are in. And the environment, I'm not just referring to the physical, but I'm also referring to the online space as well, because I always like to say that the online community has become a community on its own. And as parents, as caregivers, we know that when you have a child within the household who has a smartphone and they can access the internet, or has a laptop or anything of that sort that they can use to access the internet, they spend so much time on their device. So that becomes a new community for them. They form friendships with people that they have never met, or they are connecting with people they haven't spoken to in a very long time. That for them becomes their reality. And there is this sense that sometimes we tend to say it's the internet. It's like another world that doesn't exist. It's a world that exists because it has got its own community. And when that community judges a person harshly, sometimes young people feel that my only solution is suicide. There's a video of me that is trending now that has gone viral, or maybe a picture of myself that is so unflattering, and people now are commenting. Even you in the household, as a parent, as a caregiver, you can say to your child, it's not that bad. But when they look at the device and the world that they believe in so much, that has infiltrated their world so much, tells them that they are not good enough, that whatever happened to them is the worst thing that could ever happen. They tend to believe that. And as a result, we see suicide amongst young people on the rise. Even in South Africa, we've had cases recently. For example, last year, there was a young woman who actually committed suicide because of something that happened on social media, a video that went viral. So that shows the extent that this online community can actually have an impact on the well-being of our children. And another phenomena that has actually gone out of control, so to speak, it's the issue of cyberbullying, where we know that, a lot of our children are experiencing a lot of pain. They're experiencing a lot of frustration by being on their digital devices. And I remember one of the young people said that they are able to actually not mind those comments and just ignore them. But for other children, that is not the case. For them, what other people think about them on social media, even though they've never met these people, means a lot to them. So when they experience a lot of cyberbullying, that actually has a greater impact on their psychological well-being, on their social well-being. And I think one of the things that makes cyberbullying to be much more of, a very painful act for someone to go through is the fact that any person can be online, have a fake account, and start spreading rumors that are not true about someone else. That possibility to be anonymous and still inflict so much pain is what makes cyberbullying one of the most dangerous forms of bullying when you compare it to other forms, because a person can just be so hurtful knowing very much that I am not known. It can be someone that you know, a child that your child sits next to in class every day, who has a different account and is using that account to actually inflict pain. And for us, we always saying, when we go to our schools during outreach, we always raise awareness and say to our learners that, you know what, if someone does that to you, just block them, just ignore them. But blocking them, we feel that it works much more better, because then you are not exposed to that content. Therefore, you don't find yourself always going through your phone to see what that person has said, but you are removing yourself from that situation. Another aspect that the Film and Publication Board is very much concerned about is the issue of child pornography, which of course it has been advocated for years that the name change be done so that it's known as child sexual abuse material. As the Film and Publication Board, we have a hotline that we run. We've got a website and we've got a toll-free number that people can call in, the community, the public, to actually report any form of child pornography or child sexual abuse material that they come across. And the reason we do that is that we see that there has always been an increase in the number of cases that we are getting, and this situation is also getting out of hand. Also, why? Because of the digital world. It has made it easier for people who are interested in such content to get a hold of it. It's not like back in the past where you know that you have to connect with someone who has to send it in a disk or whatever, but now you've got different websites which are actually of adult pornographic nature but still have CSAM, child sexual abuse material, in them if you dig deeper, and people now are accessing that more frequently because it has become readily available. And what we have found is that most of the time when you go to communities, people do not even understand the whole concept. People do not understand that child sexual abuse material is illegal content, that it's something that should not be shared, something that should never even be created and no one should be in possession of. And one of the things I always like to say to people is that when we talk about child pornography or child sexual abuse material, let us try and just simplify it and just say that it's child sexual abuse captured in an image. So what you are seeing there, it's real action that took place and another person decided to take a picture or to take a video to share it. And I think that is one of the things that makes it, you know, a more gruesome type of violence against a child. The fact that someone can take a picture and decide that I'm going to share it with the whole world. For other people, it's for their gratification, and for other people, it's for financial gain. And the other thing that we've realized is that most people like to dissociate themselves from it, in a matter of saying that just because it's on the picture, just because I see it on the internet, it's not real. But we always say that it's real. That child who is actually represented that in that image is actually a real child. And therefore, when we look at that, we should be seeing child sexual abuse. Before anything else, what are you seeing in that picture? What are you seeing in that video? And I believe that as soon as people, communities, society as a whole can start viewing child sexual abuse material in that light, we will be able to have more people who are engaging, more efforts put into it to try and curb the whole virus, so I like to refer to it, of child sexual abuse material. Now, the Film and Publication Board also works closely with In Hope, the International Hotline Association. So with In Hope, we are able to make sure that whatever report comes in, into our hotline, and if it's not based in South Africa, it's actually shared with In Hope, so that whichever hosting country can make sure that that content is taken down so that it's no longer available, of course working together with the Interpol. And what we have found is that unfortunately most of our victims are girls. They are girl children. 94.24% are girl children, and the age is between 3 to 13 years of age. And that, for me, I find it very worrying, because now we recently had a meeting with In Hope where they've said that the number has gone down. Actually, it's from like infancy to like 7, 8 years, and that's what most people are interested in. And then it shows you that in order for people to move towards that direction, it means that the distribution of child sexual abuse material is still growing each and every year. And it shows that there's a lot of demand actually for people to be able to access child sexual abuse material. And that in itself, it's a problem. And another thing that we have also noted as the Film and Publication Board is that we still have a lot way to go. Now, we are saying that what are the actions that we are going to take as society, looking at the trends that we are faced with? We are saying that there's a need for advocacy. So introduction of harsh sentencing as far as, you know, child sexual abuse material is concerned is necessary. It's also necessary for us to lobby for adult websites to have tight age verification processes, and also for us to work together with internet service providers, to work together with our stakeholders in order to curb, you know, child sexual abuse material. There's also a need for the public to be educated, to be well informed, for parents to understand what are the dangers that are on the online space and what can they do to actually protect their children. And most of all, we always say that present parenting is everything. When parents are aware that when I buy my child a video game, I need to know what the age restriction is on that. when I buy my child a film, I need to understand what is being, portrayed in that, what is the age that is based like on that content, so that my child is actually protected as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Malachema. I wasn't quite sure, I didn't quite realize you were finishing.
It's fine.
We are running over our time. I'm hoping that our participants will stay with us, and we've got one more presentation for you, and it's especially important if you are working in any space of protecting a child. So if you're in law enforcement, if you're an NGO, if you're a CSO, if you're a teacher, if you're on the school governing body. We have with us from Save the Children, Divya Naidu, who is passionate about having policies in place when you work in the space of child protection. And we would like Divya to take us through her presentation. She, I think, is going to bring it a bit more practical for us in how do we actually go about protecting a child. What do we need to have in place in our organizations? What do we maybe as parents and as teachers need to know that could assist us in making sure that we protect our children? Divya, I'm going to hand over to you just in the interest of time. I won't talk too much.
Thank you, Lynette. Yes, in the meantime, if the team could just put on my PowerPoint. Good afternoon to the Deputy Minister, to the leadership of the Film and Publication Board and World Vision, and to now the reduced number of about 89 participants who stayed on.
I'm still around.
I'm so glad you're still there. But they were about 110 participants earlier, but the numbers have dropped. My presentation, I think what we've heard from everybody else so far has given us quite a good picture of, the legislative framework in terms of and conventions that cover the rights and welfare of children. We've got lots and lots of very useful statistics, and I think that gives us a good picture. My presentation is going to be focusing around what we call child safeguarding. You can go to the next slide. Child safeguarding is different from the next slide. Child protection and child safeguarding are different things. While child protection, I think we all understand, safeguarding is about us as people who work with children. And so it's a pity that some people have left, because I think this is a very important discussion we need to have about what is our role as parents first and foremost, but also as people who work in the sector. And I've seen in the chat box a number of people from government and a range of civil society organizations that are here today. And so what is our role in terms of ensuring child safeguarding? And particularly the focus of this presentation will be in this context of COVID-19 and how we work in this particular context within an online platform. There's a lot more about safeguarding, which I'm not going to cover today. So I'm going to focus on two very broad areas. Firstly, I'm going to cover through, and we can move on to the next slide. I'm going to talk a lot to the issue around the major risks involved. And then I'm going to talk to what are some of the solutions for us as service providers. As we work within this COVID context with a lot more online, a lot of us are working ourselves, moving out of the field physically onto the online field. And so there are major factors, there are major risks involved in that for us as people. I remember when we first went into lockdown, and one of the things that in our discussions with staff about, so how are you managing? One of the things people were saying was that, the home environment is literally the home environment, and not everybody has a home environment that is most conducive to working. Added to that was we do from time to time work from home, but in this situation, children were also at home. And so we ended up in a situation where we're finding, and I'm sure many of you would resonate with this, is that you have expectations from our employers that we need to work, and so we have targets and we have deadlines and there's tasks we're trying to meet, and there's children all around making noise, and then you have to be hopping from room to room to find a quiet place to try and work. So sometimes our own frustration levels can start to, the temperatures will go up. We find out, and nothing relating to COVID, it's just that we're finding it difficult to cope. So the risk for us becoming as service providers, as parents becoming perpetrators, is a major risk that we need to note and be conscious of and mindful of. The second risk is that staff then are engaging in a lot of online work. And while most of us do what we do out of the love and passion for children and with all of the righteous dedication that we committed to what we're doing, the reality is that there are also people who infiltrate our nice space that we'd like to keep and manage, who are pedophiles and who will take advantage of children. And so they too start to use this online platform to find ways, because there's a lot more online engagement with children, and so therefore the risk there is also a new kind of risk that we're finding ourselves with. And then of course, as people who are vulnerable themselves, then we're all human and in relationships. And so those who are in abusive relationships in their home find themselves in a worse off situation as well. And this is relating particularly in the context of COVID and us working remotely. And it's related to the digital era because it's possible for us to work remotely in this context, if you're wondering why I'm saying that. The other issue the other risk that comes up is that with people working, with us as service providers working remotely, it's more difficult for management to be able to see exactly what staff are doing at all times. So again, when people come to the office on a Monday morning and you can see they're really feeling frustrated, they've had a bad weekend, we're able to gauge that and support and provide the support. In this way, we're not seeing people, so it's more difficult to be able to assess what people's struggles are and the difficulties and the frustrations they may be facing, or the challenges. And we know, for example, in the first 2 weeks of COVID, the rate of family violence escalated. So that's a major problem. And staff from working in the sector are certainly not in any way protected from this sort of thing. They also are exposed to abuse and violence in their own homes. The next risk is that in our sometimes haste to want to do something, and our concern for children's safety and protection, then we'd have a tendency to want to quickly launch some programs and look at how we engage children on online platforms. And so sometimes we don't think of basic things like, for example, do children have enough data to access the internet? Yes, we know, and we've seen the statistics saying that over, 67% of children have access to mobile phones and online, and we know that children are regularly using the internet and all of that. But do children have the ability and the data to get onto a Zoom meeting or some kind of meeting for a longer period to discuss things, to talk through for a workshop and to work with them? And can you imagine a scenario then when a child is feeling almost pressurized, and not necessarily because we're pressurizing them, but goes and pressurizes the parents that they need money to buy more data, and the parent then gives the child the money, and that money was actually for food, and so they deprive themselves. So we need to be conscious of that risk as well. A lot of schools, and because children are home, lots and lots of schools have started to do a lot of work online with children. The more affluent private schools have almost a full day of online teaching. My bigger concern, it's twofold. One, again, links to the data, and so children who are not able to access this online learning then get left behind, and they're not able to be on board in terms of teaching and learning. They don't get information sent through because they don't have data, and sometimes the size of the information that is being sent is too large, and so one bit of information kills all of it. So, for example, with us at Save the Children, when we started to look at things like messaging people around safety, around COVID-19, there were lots and lots of information with so much of visuals. And while it looks very nice and it's very useful and informative, we found that a lot of parents on our network were saying, but we don't have data. Some of them don't even have WhatsApp to receive these things. So we have to really tone it down where we even could not put in any pictures, not even an emoji with a smiley face on it, just so that it was only text, so that more people could actually access the information. So it's about a consciousness of that again. That's the one scenario about in terms of teaching. The second scenario is when children are being taught online, and we find a situation where a young child is sitting in her room, and maybe the teacher, just to make sure children are actually being attentive, asks for them to put on their videos so teaching and learning can be more interactive and face-to-face. But can you imagine what the situation would be like is if this young girl decides, okay, I'm in no rush to change, and is still in her skimpy pajamas in the morning, participating in an online teaching lesson. And the risk is then, if that particular teacher has any pedophile tendencies, then decides to follow up that to tell the child, you'd give us some private tuitions, even if it's online, but the risk. And you see, the key point I want to make is with all of these things is about us as service providers and people working with children having to learn a whole new range of risks that we haven't faced before, that we need to start becoming more conscious of in a way, in terms of. And then again, the final risk is where there's situations of where we're engaging in providing cash transfers, or if we're giving helping families, supporting them with grocery vouchers, then again the risk of when we're engaging with them online and remotely, the risk of cash for sex is something we need to be mindful of. And in countries where there's very low reporting already of online of abuse, when we start to work more remotely, and in this way, it's wonderful that in South Africa we saw, and it's not wonderful that we saw an increase, it's wonderful that we actually saw the reporting. So the increase says that was not hidden. But in countries where reporting is not so easy for people to do by going on to phone a number, they have to physically get somewhere. They have no ways to report. So children then are left to live in a risky situation for a longer period of time. So what's the solutions? And broadly, the solutions are divided into four very broad categories. The first one is that we need to be aware. And all of the things that I've been covering now talks to, and it's critical then for us as service providers to participate in webinars like this, where we start to hear about and think through what are these different types of risks that children are going to face in the circumstances that we're finding ourselves in now. We need to ensure, as I said, that communication material is accessible to a wider range. So we need to look at different types of material that we develop. Yes, the visuals are very useful, you know, and nice just to send out, but we also need to think very consciously of information that we circulate around that do not have visuals, just so that we can reach that audience who do not have that kind of accessibility to information with visuals. We need to make sure that staff are trained across from frontline staff right up to the level of within the organizations of leadership in the organization, so that they support when frontline staff